In 1997, something happened in the middle of the ocean that most people still can't fully wrap their minds around. Two powerful, low-frequency sounds echoed through the deep waters of the South Pacific. They were so strong that sensors thousands of kilometers apart picked them up at the same time. Scientists were stunned. The sound was deep, unnatural, and massive. It didn't sound like a ship. It didn't sound like an earthquake. For a moment, some even whispered about sea monsters hiding in the dark. That mysterious noise was later connected to a place so isolated, so forgotten, that it almost feels unreal. A place where no country rules, no humans live, and no rescue can quickly reach you. A place so distant from civilization that the closest people are not on land, but floating in space. That place has a name, Point Nemo. And once you understand what really happens there, you'll realize it's not just the loneliest spot on Earth, it might also be the strangest. To understand Point Nemo, you have to imagine standing in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with nothing but endless water in every direction. No ships, no islands on the horizon, no sound except wind brushing against waves. Now imagine that the nearest piece of land is more than 2,600 kilometers away. And that land isn't even a busy city or a tropical paradise. It's a frozen, empty part of Antarctica. On another side, the coast of Chile sits more than 3,000 kilometers away, and New Zealand is even farther. That's how isolated this place is. Point Nemo isn't an island. It isn't a research station. It's simply a set of coordinates in the South Pacific Ocean. The name Nemo comes from Latin, meaning no one, and honestly, no name could be more perfect. No one lives there. No one visits casually. No one owns it. It lies in international waters, beyond the reach of any nation's control. This remote location was officially calculated in 1992 by a Canadian engineer named Hervé Lucatella. Using mathematical models, he identified the exact point in the ocean that is farthest from any landmass. It was pure geometry, cold numbers. But what those numbers revealed was something deeply unsettling. A part of our planet more cut off than almost anywhere else imaginable. The ocean around Point Nemo is not friendly. The water is cold, nutrients are scarce. Ocean currents swirl in such a way that they prevent rich, life-supporting waters from reaching the area. That means very little marine life survives there. Unlike other parts of the Pacific filled with fish, coral, and vibrant ecosystems, this region feels empty. Sunlight barely reaches the deep waters below. At nearly 4,000 meters deep in some areas, the ocean floor rests in near total darkness. If anything lives down there, it survives under extreme conditions. But here's the twist. Even though humans never built a city there, even though nature itself seems to avoid it, Point Nemo has become one of the most important locations on Earth. Because this is where we bury our mistakes. When satellites, space stations, and spacecraft reach the end of their lives, they can't just be left floating forever. Objects in orbit travel at incredible speeds. If left uncontrolled, they can crash back to Earth randomly. And when something the size of a bus or even larger falls from space, it becomes a fireball. Metal burns at thousands of degrees. Debris can scatter across land. If it falls over a populated city, the consequences could be catastrophic. So space agencies needed a solution. They needed a place where falling debris would hurt no one. A place empty enough, distant enough, forgotten enough. They chose Point Nemo. On March 23, 2001, the Russian space station Mir made its final journey. For 15 years, Mir had orbited Earth, carrying astronauts and representing a symbol of human ambition. But like everything built by humans, it had an expiration date. When it was no longer safe to operate, engineers carefully guided it out of orbit. Slowly, it descended toward Earth, blazing through the atmosphere. Pieces burned, fragments broke apart, and what remained fell into the cold waters of Point Nemo. That moment changed everything. After Mir, other space agencies followed. Over the past 2 decades, more than 260 spacecraft, satellites, and rocket parts have been deliberately crashed into this remote ocean graveyard. It has become known as the spacecraft cemetery. Think about that for a second. At the bottom of the loneliest place on Earth, thousands of tons of human technology rest in silence. Machines that once circled the planet, equipment that carried dreams, experiments, and billion-dollar missions, all lying in darkness beneath miles of water. And it doesn't stop there. The International Space Station, the floating laboratory where astronauts live and work, is expected to meet the same fate when it retires. According to NASA, the ISS will eventually be decommissioned, and when that day comes, engineers will likely guide it toward this very same point in the Pacific.
But what nobody expected was how dangerous uncontrolled space debris could be. Back in 1978, a Soviet satellite called Cosmos 954 malfunctioned. It carried a nuclear reactor on board. When contact was lost, it spiraled unpredictably. Eventually, it re-entered Earth's atmosphere without proper control. Radioactive debris scattered across northern Canada. An international cleanup operation had to be launched. It was one of the largest recovery missions of its kind. Thankfully, no one was killed, but the message was clear. Space technology falling randomly is not just inconvenient, it's dangerous. Then, in 1997, a woman named Lottie Williams was walking in a park in Oklahoma when a small piece of metal fell from the sky and struck her shoulder. It was debris from a Delta II rocket. She wasn't seriously injured, but imagine how surreal that must have felt, being hit by something that once traveled in orbit.
Events like these forced agencies to rethink their strategy. They needed precision, they needed control, and most importantly, they needed emptiness. That's what Point Nemo offers. When a spacecraft is ready to be retired, engineers use onboard thrusters to carefully adjust its orbit. Timing is everything. Angles must be exact. Calculations are performed with extreme accuracy. The goal is to ensure that when the object enters Earth's atmosphere, its path leads directly toward the empty waters of Point Nemo. As it descends, friction with the atmosphere creates intense heat. Temperatures can rise above 3,000 degrees Celsius. Most of the structure burns up, turning into ash and vapor. Only heavier fragments survive long enough to hit the ocean surface. And down they go, into silence. But there's something almost poetic about it. Point Nemo is so remote that even ships avoid it. Commercial vessels plan routes that steer clear of this region. If a ship were to experience trouble there, rescue could take weeks. Helicopters capable of flying that distance without refueling are rare. Even modern technology struggles against such isolation. And here's the part that feels almost unreal. When astronauts aboard the International Space Station pass over Point Nemo, they are closer to that lonely ocean than any human on land. At around 400 kilometers above Earth, they become the nearest neighbors to a place completely cut off from humanity. Imagine floating in space, looking down at a blue planet, and knowing that directly below you is the most isolated point on Earth. It's a reminder of how small we really are. But the mystery doesn't end with falling satellites. Remember those strange sounds recorded decades ago? For years, people speculated about giant creatures lurking in the deep. Some imagined ancient beasts hidden beneath the ocean floor. Eventually, scientists suggested the sounds were likely caused by ice movements, glaciers cracking and shifting under immense pressure. It was a logical explanation, a scientific one. Yet something about Point Nemo still feels unknown. Maybe it's the emptiness. Maybe it's the idea that beneath those waters lie the remains of human ambition. Or maybe it's the uncomfortable truth that we needed a place so forgotten to hide the consequences of our progress. The emotional weight of this location is heavier than most realize. Every spacecraft that ends up there represents years of effort. Engineers dedicate their lives to building these machines. Astronauts risk everything to travel beyond our atmosphere. Nations spend billions pushing the boundaries of science. And yet, in the end, those creations are sent to the loneliest place on Earth, to sink quietly into darkness. There's something deeply human about that cycle. We build, we dream, we explore, and eventually, we let go. Point Nemo is not just an ocean coordinate, it's a symbol of how far we've come and how temporary everything is. Even the most advanced technology ever created eventually becomes debris. But maybe that's not a sad story. Maybe it's a reminder of balance. We push into space, but we remain tied to Earth. We chase the stars, but gravity always calls us back. And when it does, Point Nemo waits, silent, patient, untouched. In a world filled with crowded cities, endless noise, and constant connection, there's something almost humbling about knowing such a place exists. A place with no borders, no people, no permanent marks of civilization, except the ones we intentionally send there. The loneliest spot on Earth. And perhaps, in that loneliness, there's a strange kind of peace. Because even at the edge of isolation, even in the deepest darkness of the Pacific, Point Nemo reminds us that exploration always comes with responsibility, and the ocean never forgets what we leave behind.